We know as marketers, every buying decision, no matter how cold or dry the product is all made on emotion. No matter what the customer says, is always an emotional decision. Then it's backed up by logic. So you need to have a good offer, and the marketing can only make promises as good as the product as well. Otherwise, you get into these situations where the marketing has to be really good because the product sucks, right? If you have a good offer, then the marketing doesn't have to be top notch either because the offer is good. So what I always think is like, what is the emotional thing that we're trying to solve here? What is the emotional jobs to be done? So I came up with this simple system called the big filter. And it's, what do you sell? So we sell businesses. Who do you sell it to? We sell it to entrepreneurs, investors, or people who want to be those things. And three, what do you really sell? And that's the emotional punchline. And what we really sell is an opportunity to change your life. Like, we will change your life. Now that might be negative. The businesses you buy might go to crap, right? A Google update might happen. It gets destroyed, or it might be really, really positive, right? It could change your life forever. And so that's what I do. So if you're selling like a boring product, ask yourself those three questions, and anything can become exciting when you think of it through the lens of emotion.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm always interested to talk to marketers who have unique challenges, and I think Gregory Elfrink from Empire Flippers is one of those marketers because he runs a marketplace for businesses. And you can't have buyers without sellers, and sellers with no buyers is also a challenge. So, Gregory, if you want to give people the elevator pitch of Empire Flippers, that'd be really cool. And from there, we can get into the marketing challenges you face.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. So the elevator pitch for Empire Flippers is we're the largest curated marketplace in the world when it comes to buying and selling digital businesses. So I have now helped sell over 2,000 businesses, made 78 entrepreneurs millionaires at the moment of exit, which is very cool, very fun. And yeah, like we sell anything that's digital. So e-commerce, software as a service, media sites like content sites, and pretty much anything you can think of digitally. I have probably at least sold one of them.
Right, right. So, in the same way that, folks in the real estate industry always prefer to have the listing side of the equation, I would imagine that, you're out there. There are a couple of other places people could list their businesses for sale. So you have to make sure that people are aware of the fact that you exist, and then that if they know about you and some of the competitors, that they choose you. So how do you come around? How do you, solve that marketing challenge of finding and making sure that the businesses that are thinking of selling, that the owners know that you guys exist, and that, if you're not a $40 million business that could afford an investment bank, there's actually something that's a tier below that, that is a marketplace like yourselves.
You touched on one of the things that annoys me in the industry when people bring up, I think, since, well, sellers use investment bankers over us, right? But
Yeah.
I've actually have used an investment banker. I can't talk about that story on here, but and I was so frustrated, man. I mean, this just sounds like me promoting EF, but a lot of the ways are just so archaic, the what they do, and like we have during like 2020, 2021, we outcompeted a lot of them, which they were very annoyed by. But yeah, to answer your question, you're right. It is similar to the real estate problem. You, without sellers, you have no inventory, and that's what we sell as businesses. So we need the inventory. And it kind of goes both ways. It's a balancing act as you build it up. So first you need the sellers, so you have the inventory. Then you need to go find the buyers because none of the buyers know that you have that. And once you reach critical mass, then they start coming to you more and more. So SEO is a huge factor, and we can get into marketing channel stores, but that's one of our workhorses when it comes to traffic. But then you run into this other issue where a seller sells a business and they're like, hey, well, I tested out this Amazon FBA business with you, or this DDC e-commerce store. How about this really esoteric SaaS I built? Like, yeah, sure, we can sell it. But then buyers don't really associate you with that type of business. So they don't necessarily go there when they're shopping for that. So you have to also constantly be growing your own positioning to like, hey, come look, we have this other thing that isn't normally on here. Because otherwise, if you just rely on complete inbound, like you'll never be able to sell that business. So it's a fine balancing act between both. And funny enough, I was just talking to a guy. I'm hiring right now. I was just talking to a guy who's talking to me about different positioning problems he had with a real estate marketplace. And I think that is the nature of a double-sided marketplace, to always be frustrated that the positioning you're doing has not yet caught up with the market.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's sort of funny. It reminds me a little bit of, what some marketplaces do is they try to take the outliers and turn them into their own stories, right? So Airbnb, for example, has these bizarro places that you can rent out, like tiny houses or, abandoned airplanes or whatever it is. And so they try to turn those into their own stories. But, you've got obviously all your mainstream businesses, heavy FBA, heavy content site. I've looked through the inventory, and then you do have the interesting stories every once in a while when you log in and you're like, what the heck is that business? Right. And I think you guys do a great job with your email newsletters to folks who might be, ongoing buyers like myself. And I think it's actually entertaining to receive
Oh,
some of
thank
those.
you. Thank you. We actually put a lot of effort to try to make that happen. Like, I think a lot of B2B marketing is pretty boring. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, but like one of the most profitable things I did for EF is just like having fun, like making an entrepreneur laugh, you know? They're the most jaded customer base because they just get hit by so much marketing all the time, right? So by making them laugh or enjoy what they're reading, it goes a long way.
Yeah, yeah. And nice thing about marketplaces is when they do reach critical mass, their SEO starts to multiply. I've been doing SEO since before Google existed. So I'm really old school when it comes to
Uh,
SEO. I
so
started
you've been through many eras of SEO is dead. That
oh,
I've
for
only been through
sure.
five myself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the new thing that a lot of folks are sort of very concerned about, obviously, is zero click searches, because AI chatbots can just go ahead and answer a question without even bringing you to a search engine results page. I don't think that necessarily impacts your business nearly as much, but you probably do need to think through, you know, as the algorithms change, where they had a huge update recently, as you probably are aware, the helpful content update. And I would imagine that a lot of the sellers in your marketplace were hit by that, and may either be selling as a result of being on the wrong side of the HCU, or perhaps super excited that they weren't hit by the helpful content update at
Yeah.
Google. Um, so what's your thinking on SEO, both from the perspective of your own business, but also from the perspective of the sellers? Like, do you come across sellers who really have ignored SEO and haven't fully yet maximized their business value due to SEO?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of ways I can answer that question because there's so many different perspectives I see with it. From us personally, like the updates almost never hurt us. It's very rare that we lose any significant traffic with any kind of update. And I think that goes to back to like just making a real business, a real brand. And if you're building a content site, which they tend to be smaller, focus on affiliate and display ad revenue, often that's not the goal, and they're not building those kind of like real businesses. I think that's where they run into these kind of issues. To answer the second part of the question, I've seen a lot of sellers destroyed by the helpful content update, like just got wrecked throughout 2023 with that. And that has a lot of knock-on effects. Like one, if they do try to sell with us because of that, they're in a rude awakening. Like you can sell a declining business, of course. We've done it many times and we will continue to do it, but it's not easy. It's very
Mhm.
difficult. Like I have a friend, he had a $4.5 million or a little bit underneath $4.5 million content site, telling him for years to sell with me because he had no intention of ever growing into what I would consider quote unquote real business. It was just affiliate and display ads, which is great, but like you don't get ones that big that often. And so he wouldn't do it. He's like, no, I just want more and more money before I sell it. And then he got hit by this in 2023. Now that business is probably worth $200,000. Would someone ever spend 200K on it? Maybe, but the fall from grace is so dramatic that it'd be a very like, non-risk adverse buyer, right? Like they have a large appetite. Like, sure, why not? Maybe we can get back there. But most buyers would see like, whoa, what is this? They're not even going to go deeper into that. The fall is so deep, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. On the zero click stuff, I'm not too concerned for us in particular because of everything you already just said. Newer businesses that don't have that, I think that is going to be a rough spot. But I think we're still several years away before all the doom and gloom of SEO bears any fruit whatsoever with what's going on with AI and all this kind of stuff. Like Google would literally have to destroy their entire business model as it stands today
Right.
to radically change that. And I think a lot of SEOs get freaked out, right? Like, oh my
Right.
God, ChatGPT is going to destroy it. Like, man, no, you're just in an echo chamber. The vast majority of Americans, the vast majority of people don't even know what ChatGPT is, much less are they using it, right? We're just
Right.
like in our marketing echo chamber of being always on the edge. I think we tend to forget that sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, and the humans do like choice, right? They don't want to necessarily always be fed one answer. So even as the ChatGPT and other LLMs get better at giving you just that one answer of what's the best hotel to stay at in Minneapolis that has a pool, you know, it could give you just one answer, right? Or you could actually end up with a search results page to dig through. Um, one thing that it's interesting that I've seen in particular B2B marketing is like what's old is becoming new again. Ironically, for a lot of our clients in the B2B category, uh, sort of digital direct mail is taking off, right? So I invented some tech that puts a custom QR code on every piece of mail. When it gets scanned, it pings the CRM, and then you can also personalize landing pages. And you know, the snail mail inbox is not as full as the email inbox. So if the email inbox, if you're not breaking through that clutter, sometimes you have to go back to the snail mail inbox. Have there any sort of more traditional businesses that end up on your platform, or is it like really sort of digital centric businesses?
Yeah, almost 100% digital. Now we have had situations where like someone has like an e-commerce store that also has like a physical retail location.
Right.
In those cases, I mean, usually the retail location makes up a very small amount of the revenue, like usually less than 1%, if I'm being honest,
Hmm.
when we've done it. So we usually separate them out so they have a better chance of getting a buyer. And they might change like the retail brand, or they might let that brand still have that name, but it's just the brick and mortar store. So we see that. But to your point on like what is old is new again, I've seen that a lot too, man. I remember a few years ago, I've never said this myself. I know marketers have said it. Email is dead, right? I've
Right.
always been a preacher of the pulpit of email marketing. I think is one of the best forms out there. But I've seen direct mail come back. I've seen SEO, like I said, die several times and come back. And then things just get a rebrand all the time. Like I remember when demand gen and demand capture was just inbound and outbound. Like that was kind of the name of it. And I also remember when getting backlinks was getting backlinks when that was digital PR. But these are the same things.
Right.
This is marketers repackaging things in my view.
Yeah, one great thing about sort of email never having died and having been so foundational for so many marketers is it's the other forms of push marketing that have layered on top or next to the email that I think have really strengthened push marketing because now you've got this idea like I have to have a strong enough offering that a person is willing to let me text them, like SMS,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which has a completely different bar. Like getting a
for
person's
sure.
phone number, you need to really be good at convincing them that that's going to be worth doing. And then you've got sort of the in-between one, which is like browser push, right? Maybe the person's going to be willing to let you do push notifications to them. Or if you're running an app, right, then you have app-based push. So there's like all these permission relationships that you can layer in. And I find that a lot of marketers like don't think through all those various push options and how they can be unique and how they can, allow for a stronger permission relationship.
I agree. I think a lot of marketers, especially a lot of the solopreneurs tend to deal with, or smaller teams, right? Is they have a bit of a myopic view on things. Like an SEO is only an SEO. They are often not that great of a marketer, even though they're ironically getting some of the best traffic in the world. They just think rank and bank and like move on to the next thing, right? So like I'm always considering like how could I talk to someone in the entire ecosystem of you? Like, how could I be everywhere to you in a way that's always valuable? Like, if you see an ad of mine, I want that ad, whether you ever do business with me at all, is valuable to you in some way, whether knowledge, entertainment, ideally both, to get you down the path. And that's a big way of success for us. Like back in 2016, 2017, when I first came out with the company, I was the main, well, really the only content creator, and that's what I got hired to do. And I was everywhere, man. Like I had friends going to bookkeepers that specialized in their business, and they thought like, this is just small bookkeeping. They go to see their blog. The first post is from me. I had the highest ranked, I think the mo highest traffic post on Moz.com for a while, minus their like login and page and homepage. And which is funny, I found that out from the CMO of Ahrefs because him and I were giving a speech together, and I didn't really know him that well at that time, but now Tim and I are pretty good friends. And Tim just like came up to me in a thick Ukrainian accent. He's like, have you seen your post on Moz? I was like, yeah. Like, what about it? And he showed me that. He's like, I want you to do the same thing for me on HR. I was like, okay. So I try to speak to the customer as in as many channels as possible because everyone reacts differently. And by doing that, you build trust at a much faster pace, right?
Absolutely. And what I like about some of your content and its educational layer is that you may be helping a buyer who's not going to be excuse me, a seller who's not going to be a seller for some time. Right. I mean, one thing that, and I'm not, you may or may not have covered it because I haven't read all of your stuff, but a lot of business owners don't realize that revenue concentration risk impacts valuation dramatically, right? And so whether that's traffic sources being all SEO, right, which is a huge concentration risk on that one thing, or just concentration risk in customers, whether you're selling to consumers or selling to businesses, right? You want to see diversity in that as a buyer so that you can weather any hiccups, right? And so, I think for the content sites, it's key that they think, even if they're awesome at SEO, right, they need to be working on those permission relationships and getting this, people to be willing to subscribe because, if you can't figure out how to get the person back, if it's like a one-time visit and they never come back to your site, buyers are not going to be as excited about buying that.
I 100% agree. So in the M&A world, we call it the critical point of failure, right? Or critical risk of failure. So basically any one thing that your business is built on, if that thing goes away, do you still have a business? So that content size is usually SEO. With e-commerce is often Facebook ads. That's usually the only channel a lot of these companies are running through, and that's a big risk. Then you have product risk, like only one product, like if I'm an entrepreneur looking at buying a business, say a $1.5 million Amazon FBA business, and there's only one product, that's pretty risky. Like, when if this product goes out of fashion, right? Unless I'm like private equity with $100 million, then it's like, whatever, they'll buy it, right? Because it doesn't represent that big of a risk. So I always tell sellers, the more de-risking of your business you can do, the more valuable your business becomes. And that usually is having several pedestals. So in the content affiliate site example, I have a friend. He hasn't sold his business with me, but one day I'll get him. I've been trying to get him for years to do it. But he just keeps growing and bigger and bigger. So we'll see what happens. But he started off as your basic Amazon associate site, run of the mill kind of site. He grew a YouTube channel around that. He actually knew the subject, so he had that advantage, which a lot of SEOs don't have. But he knew the subject, and he grew an email newsletter. And then he just asked his email list, like, hey, I'm thinking about sourcing some products. What would you like me to sell you? And they told him, he ordered it, couldn't keep the stuff in stock. And then he raised $17 million to grow it. Now he's like one of the biggest online e-commerce stores in his industry. And it all started from SEO Amazon affiliate site. So I always tell my marketing friends, like, ask yourself what the bigger picture is here. Like, if you're an SEO making money through affiliate and display ad, that inherently means you're making someone else more money because otherwise the model wouldn't work, right? Someone's paying for the ad, someone's paying for the affiliate link. So ask yourself how you can go bigger up the revenue food chain as well. And the final thing I give on valuations is just make yourself as useless as possible. The more useless you become as the entrepreneur, the more valuable the business becomes because buyers want to invest, right? They don't want to acquire a seven-figure job. So if you can show them like, hey, look, my team is doing all this stuff, I can take 2 months off, all that helps.
Yeah, delegating and making yourself as redundant as possible for the business is absolutely key. I guess that's another thing that solopreneurs or smaller folks don't realize is, to sell the business, you need to be able to decouple from it.
For sure, absolutely. I always joke about it when I say the useless thing because entrepreneurs, and I feel very similar to them, to my target market. We're a little bit ego driven. Like, we want to like do this, do that, do this, but like the key really is like you not being the guy doing that, you delegating. Like I told some friends like the four horsemen of wealth in our era right now, in my view, is It's coding, which is the weakest. Sales, and I think coding is going to get weaker with AI as well. That's coming up. But sales is the second weakest. Marketing is the second strongest, and delegation is the dark horse that beats everything. Because if you can delegate well, you can get all the other three horses working for you at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting. There seems to be different perspectives, and maybe that's only on the upper end of the businesses that you're representing to sell, where you've got certain philosophies which are keep as much of the marketing in-house and don't use an agency, right? And then there's other folks who are no, no, delegate to an agency because their subject matter experts are working on dozens of other clients, and so they can aggregate the learnings from those other clients into your campaigns, and you don't have to make the same mistakes yourself. So do you see any shift in that over time that like more and more people either want to be doing it in-house or more and more people are like, no, no, I'd actually like to get an agency to do this for me?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I use a lot of agencies at EF. That's like one of the things I really believe in, but I also really believe in in-house too. So I think the question comes down to is what is the core thing of you? Like for us, it's content. I honestly have struggled hiring content creators. It's actually a pretty hard thing to do, as it turns out to be. It's hard to find someone like me who's just willing to belt out a bunch of content. But the other thing that we do is like our CRM is quite complex. It's a double-sided marketplace. So that I did hire. Well, right now I'm hiring in-house for to help me take it to the next level. To me, that's important. But knowing the strategy, the vision, all that kind of stuff, it sounds woo-woo, but it's extremely important. Like nailing your offer. That's something the in-house team should really be coming up with along with the other leaders. As terms of like you need someone who's just a master at meta ads, hire an agency, tell them the strategy. If they're a master at meta ads, like they can help you create the creative around the strategy, right? But you have to be a good customer to that agency. Just like there's really bad agencies, like tons of them. There's a lot of bad customers too. Like the agency can't just work miracles. They like you're not their only client. They can't spend 40 hours a week on you unless you're paying them crazy money, right? So you have to meet them halfway. So I'm a believer in doing both. I think agencies are a great accelerator, but the way people treat them sometimes, like no wonder so many of them come to sell with me. Like, get me
Yeah.
out of this thing, Greg.
Yeah, when it comes to the sort of the agency pitching and selection process, we've got a saying, at least that I've heard in the agency world, which is the client gets the agency they deserve, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
works both ways, right? If you're
But
going to
like,
like underpay them and be demanding, or you're not good at making an agency selection process, you get the one you deserve, right? Because you know
yeah,
what you're
I
doing.
have definitely hired my fair share of bad agencies. So I'm not saying I've never been burned. Like where I usually fail is on the diligence side because I'm friends with so many agency owners, right? And like I'll tell them about a thing I'm doing, like, oh, we could definitely do that for you. Like I've known this guy for years, why not? And then I hire them, like, this is why I shouldn't have done this. I should have looked at several before just hiring my friend.
Right.
So
Which I guess makes it harder to fire
yeah.
them too, right? Because you feel
What's
bad
that?
after that. It makes it harder to fire them too if you hire your friends.
Yeah. Well, I'm a pretty friendly guy, but I keep friendship and business like decently separate. So I think
Right.
they're a bit galled when it happens. So I fired a few of my friends over the years. And it's nothing personal. Like it's just not performing, right?
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think people who don't do a good job end up getting the agency they deserve. And people do a good job also do, right?
Yeah.
So my area of weakness is always in the selection process. Luckily, I have gone through many rounds of this now, though, so I've gotten better. Learned some wisdom from it.
So what's the wisdom like? Because I'm sure that some of your sellers, right, may be able to sort of accelerate their businesses in a short amount
Mhm.
of time if they bring on an agency that is strong in the area where they're weak. SEO takes time, but a lot of the other channels, the paid media channels, you bring in a good agency, they can do some double-digit growth pretty quickly by identifying waste in paid search or some missed strategy in Meta, et cetera. And so, do you sometimes sort of say, before you list this, you may want to consider, it looks like we pulled your SimilarWeb or we looked at SEMrush or we looked at whatever report, and it looks like you could probably do a little bit better if you just took 6 months and invested. Do you ever get involved in that, or do you just sort of take the listing and leave it to the new owner to identify all the upside opportunity?
So it is a very good question. And as every great SEO answer to every SEO questions, it depends. So if the seller's goal is like, I just wanted to get rid of this, like there's no value to do that for them, right? Why slow them down? And also, if they're on a very good growth trajectory, I
Yeah.
often won't recommend to do that. So a very common mistake entrepreneurs make is, oh, I'm growing so well, I let me hit this peak, then I'll sell. That's
Mm.
usually the wrong time to sell, as counterintuitive as that sounds. Because what does a buyer want? They want to buy growth. They want that growth. They don't want to
Yeah.
see you hit the peak and now you're in this stagnation. And every company, as I'm sure you've seen, as they're growing, they're eventually going to hit peaks. And those peaks sometimes last a long time, sometimes it's a very short time. By the
Yeah.
way, they hit these peaks and they have to retool the whole company, right? So buyers want to buy as you're going up the summit, about halfway between that potential peak is like the is on the S curve. That's like the most beautiful time to sell. So you can't really time the market, but if you want to time it to that P&L as close as you can. But yeah, so I've seen it across the board like that, where the sellers want that. In turn, and now on the opposite side, if I'm dealing with a seller, it was very early stages, like we're just having a discovery call. Like I started doing cold email for EF, and I generated about 11.5 million dollars worth of pipeline from cold email in the last 5 weeks. And those kind of conversations are very early stage, right? They don't know me at all, usually. Some of them watch our YouTube channel, so they kind of heard of me, like, okay, I'll have a call with Greg. I've seen him around. So that's helpful. Again, the power of being everywhere, right? But when I have those calls, the call is almost always like, I have no interest of selling right now. I want to sell next year. Like, great, let's talk about your marketing. Now it makes sense. Like I'm not,
Mm.
because I don't push anyone, it's all consulting. I like, if that's your goal, let me help you reverse engineer it. So we'll do a whole exit planning call. I'll say like, oh, you should look into this, do that. And that's enough time to really do something meaningful. Like if you're gonna come to me and your goal is to sell within 3 months, I wouldn't recommend you doing anything. In fact, you should stop doing anything experimental at all because it'll hurt your chance to sell.
Yeah, that's a great point. Um, given the fact that there have been a few major algorithmic changes at the search engines recently, in particular Google, do you feel that the buyers are a little bit more skittish if the seller's overly dependent on SEO, even if they made it through the gauntlet on the helpful content update?
Yeah. So again, it depends, but with content sites, 100%. So in 2023, this has probably been the lowest hunger I've seen for content sites in my almost 8 years at Empire Flippers. Usually that's like the good, like newbie starter business model, all the way up to veteran. Like we just sold it's not totally sold yet, but it looks like it's about to be a $2.2 million content site just last week, right? So there's still definitely people out there buying it, but between Google's schizophrenia over the last 12 months or so, and the fears of ChatGPT and what does this mean, SGE, all these very nightmarish abbreviations hitting the SEOs, they are a lot more skittish, a lot more scared. But there's also other factors too applying to that. So from private capital markets, we're very affected by that. A lot of people don't realize this, but you don't like the public eye doesn't see the private capital fall, but when private capital falls, it's way more painful than the stock market because there's no meme stocks that can bring you back, right? Like Reddit Wall Street Bets isn't going to help you out of this one, you know? So when capital dries up like that, it also becomes a scary environment for buyers to lay out. Now, in a good market or a bad market, buyers will still buy. Is usually in an uncertain market where they don't buy. And we're in an uncertain market right now, I'd say. Valuations are still pretty strong, but it is scarier out there for a buyer to actually make that leap of faith. So for a seller, yeah, having a diversity is really, really important. Now, if you're e-commerce, not content, that's a little bit of a different story because you probably like SEO is probably not your only channel. So that's actually like a big boon for you. But yeah,
Right.
it's something to be concerned about.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of folks don't realize the interaction effect with, higher versus lower interest rates, right? Because investors,
Yeah.
whether it's myself and I've, underdid it. We did 11 acquisitions and I've done a few others myself. I have to look at what else could I do with my money, right? Or do I
Right,
actually have to
right.
go out and borrow, right? If I'm, am I going to, PE firms love to use leverage, right? In addition to their own dry powder, they love to use leverage. And so if anyone's going to be using leverage to buy a business, the business has to be really crushing it in order to justify borrowing money at the kind of interest rates that where they're at now. They're coming down a little bit now, but that's a bit of a headwind I think that the whole ecosystem has to face, right? Is that if there's uncertainty in the economy, in the, is it going to be a third world war? Is SEO
Yeah.
going to go away? Like there's an unusually high number of uncertainty points and interest rates are high. I think it is sort of the perfect storm of deer in the headlights. Everyone's just frozen at the
Yeah,
moment.
it's in the marketing world, as far as I know, I'm the only one who calls it this, but I call it liminal space. So are you familiar with the concept of like liminal spaces, like the back rooms or whatever? Or is it like an internet horror meme? But it's all about liminal spaces. So if you're in a hotel, you walk out of your hotel room, you're in the hotel hallway. That's a liminal space. It's a place designed as transition to get you
Right.
to one point to the next. So with uncertain markets, buyers don't want to come out of the hotel room. The hallway is very scary. They don't know where the hallway is going to go, right? But then on the marketing challenge, like your whole goal as a marketer, in my view, is to get someone to enter that liminal space, to walk down that hall, and ideally through the door you design. They might not walk through that door, they might walk down another door, but it's usually through liminal spaces where we kind of change our beliefs, change our decisions. Like, you saw it through COVID, like a lot of people who are left are now right and right are now left. And it's like upside down or what's going on. And it's because of such a crazy liminal space, it could change someone's core belief, right? So when it comes to our current market, like the way I see it is like we're going through a liminal space right now, but I think things are actually going to get a lot better. I think we're through the worst of a lot of this. And I think the uncertainty is going to go away. We might still have high interest rates, but certainty will come back, which always means buyers come back because buyers buy no matter what the economy is doing. 'Cause at the end of the day, M&A is not macroeconomic, it's microeconomic. So like your own business that the seller's selling is its own ecosystem of economics at the end of the day that can be quite divorced from the rest of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, and I probably the folks who get in early as things start to warm up again will get the better prices,
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah. So
It,
you like right now, if you're a buyer and you know what you want and you're skilled and you have some dry powder, whether you're using leverage or all dry powder, like now is a fantastic time to buy. Probably the best time I've seen to buy in the last 4 years. So like 20, like right before 2020 was a really good time to buy too. And
Mhm.
then right during like the big black swan of COVID, it was a great time to buy. And then COVID, of course, boosted all digital sales. So then it became a seller's market for about 2.5 years.
Right, right. Okay, well, for everyone who's got dry powder who's listening, I guess they should
Come
lock
on
in and
over.
see what's for sale.
The empire awaits.
Exactly. So are there any marketing channels that you plan on using over the next year that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, quite a few actually. So, I love SEO. That's like my core background as a marketer, a content marketer, and I've always wanted to go after other channels. What we do makes it challenging though, because the sales cycle is so long. It's like, from the moment of an email subscriber to the moment they're selling their business with me, it could be like 256 days on average. It's a long time. But I designed this whole account-based marketing approach, ABM strategy, like it's an ABM strategy at scale. So I'm hitting them with SEO, I'm hitting them with cold email, retargeting, and a few other things I have planned. And I'm excited because I'm working with an agency that I hopefully have selected properly. We'll see. They are very experienced in selling complex things through paid media. And I think we have a very strong strategy going after DDC e-commerce stores in 2024. So I'm very excited to see how this plays out. I think if a few of my projects work, this could be one of our most profitable years yet. I won't know until towards the end of the year because of the way M&A works.
Yeah, that actually brings up one final or one additional follow-up question, which is in B2B, the longer the sales cycle, the more uncertainty there is in which of the channels that you're testing is working or not.
Hmm.
So, have you come up with sort of some proxy variables or proxy KPIs where you're like, okay, I don't know for sure that they're going to list with us, or I don't know for sure that they're going to buy from us, but I'm seeing signals which I like, right? That I can see quicker, so I don't have to wait 6 months
Yeah.
or 9 months or a year to figure out if that marketing worked or not. You don't have the luxury of waiting to see if your marketing is working. So how do you go through and pick your micro conversions, your sort of leading indicator KPIs?
Yeah, so I look what mo to most other marketers would be vanity metrics or kind of those metrics for me. They're the leading indicators, which they are not great, by the way. I wish I was like an e-commerce store with like a week sales cycle, you know? I talk to my friends who are like that, like, oh, it takes 30 days. Like, oh, woe is you. Like mine is so long the pixel gives out before it happens, you know?
Exactly.
So I look higher up in the KPI. So, for example, one of our lead magnets is a valuation tool where someone can type in, empireflippers.com valuation tool. They fill out some information, takes 5 minutes, and they'll get like a super rough estimation range of what they're worth. If that's going up, then that is a leading indicator of interest, right? So we look at things like that. On the buy side, if someone comes and registers an account with us and they show us proof of funds, which usually showing us a bank statement. It can be quite kind of a vulnerable experience for a buyer to show us something like that. And they upload their identity through their license and all that kind of stuff, so KYC, and then they unlock a business. That's a very good leading indicator as well that they're
Right.
going to do some sort of action. So I look at those, and then I also look at engagement. So you mentioned our newsletter. Says it takes so long for someone to trust us enough to actually do the action because we're talking about someone's entire net worth a lot of times on the seller side and a significant chunk of the buyer's net worth usually as well. It takes a lot of trust. So the way we do the middle funnel is we look at, are people engaged? Are people liking what we have to say? Our newsletter, our blogs, our YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So that's another thing. Are we staying top of mind? Like a lot of the content we do isn't designed to get you to do an action right away, is designed to earn your trust. So we're not really selling anything in the content usually.
So continued engagement, revolves around, I think, one of your passion areas, which is content creation, right? So great
Yeah.
content is the engine for continued engagement. And so I think that's a great lesson for people to take away, which is, that if you continue to delight people with great content as a content creator, it's not just that initial touch point and then you won't hear from them again. You need to figure out how to feed their curiosity, feed their brains with great content. So how do you ideate content? You're looking for another person to help you, right? So how do you ideate content when an idea flies into your brain? Because a lot of folks in B2B are in categories that might be considered a little bit boring, right? And yet they need to create content on a regular basis.
So this is a great question. I am glad you said the boring thing because I don't know if you ever watched the show Mad Men, but I love that
Sure.
show. And when I first joined EF as just a blogger, long before I became the head of marketing, I used to tell the founders, one day I'm going to be the Don Draper of this company, you know? And then it happened. So one of the things he does in that show is like, I forget exactly what the product is. I think it's like Clorox or something like that, but it inspired me to think about boring products and how you sell them. Well, like we know as marketers, every buying decision, no matter how cold or dry the product is all made on emotion. No matter what the customer says, is always an emotional decision. Then it's backed up by logic. So you need to have a good offer, and the marketing can only make promises as good as the product as well. Otherwise, you get into these situations where the marketing has to be really good because the product sucks, right? If you have a good offer, then the marketing doesn't have to be top notch either because the offer is good. So what I always think is like, what is the emotional thing that we're trying to solve here? What is the emotional jobs to be done? So I came up with this simple system called the big filter. And is what do you sell? So we sell businesses. Who do you sell it to? We sell it to entrepreneurs and investors or people who want to be those things. And three, what do you really sell? And that's the emotional punchline. And what we really sell is an opportunity to change your life. Like we will change your life. Now that might be negative. The businesses you buy might go to crap, right? A Google update might happen. It gets destroyed, or it might be really, really positive, right? It could change your life forever. And so that's what I do. So if you're selling like a boring product, ask yourself those three questions. And anything can become exciting when you think of it through the lens of emotion. So like laundry detergent, very boring product. I have a friend, he built a multiple seven-figure, probably $11 million business now in the span of less than 2 years selling this type of product, a commodity product. And what it comes down to is like, what's the emotion of this? Like your clothes will smell better. It'll like you will have more confidence. You can go and live your life better. Like these are the emotional things. Like from a B2B side, like if you're selling a CRM, what are you selling? You're selling the ecosystem of their entire business. Like, what do you want? I can help you get it, right? Like that's what it always comes down to, right? Knowing what they want and tapping into that emotion, then dressing up your product as the logic that justifies the purchase that they did with the emotion, right? So that's how I kind of think about it. Other stuff, data, like if you have any data, like in-house data, I always say is the best content you can create. And stories, as much storytelling as you can do, because storytelling is like hardwired into us as much as the emotional purchase of things.
Yep, yep. I agree. For the more boring of did its clients, I always recommend that they tap their entire ecosystem to co-create content with everybody they already do
Oh
business with.
yeah.
And that's not
Yeah.
just the testimonials, because that's the obvious one. Sometimes it's your supplier, sometimes it's your accountant, and sometimes it's, a headhunter who placed somebody with you. Like you can co-create content with a lot of different folks. You don't necessarily only need to do testimonials. So
I 100%
that's a
agree. Yeah, like
huge
one of
win.
the things I would love to do, and if any content creators out there are listening to this, I would love to create like an empire media network where, because like my team don't run e-commerce stores, right? They don't run SaaS stores. We can only go so far with our content when it comes to giving advice on that. But if there's someone out there who is doing that, like, well, I have a newsletter of 100,000 subscribers. How about we work together and I could syndicate what you're already doing and it becomes an Empire Flipper show, right? Like, I think that's a great idea. And this is an unpopular one, but I also think competitors doing content together is really interesting. I've done a few things with my competitors. Some of them hate me, but I'm friends. I consider them friends. So like I like doing content with them because like at the end of the day, if they're doing good business, I'm doing good business is a friendly rivalry in my view. And I think having two competitors hash it out is actually really useful for the customers because they often both will have good advice, but from different angles that can really help the customers. So if you have
Yeah.
a friendly relationship with your competitor, that's another interesting angle.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. In the end, the decision lies with the buyer, right? The
Yeah.
customer of an agency or whatever it is, and they should end up with the best one. Like, I don't want to be somebody's agency if I'm not the best agency for them at the time. That's not a recipe for a long-term relationship. So I actually agree
For
with you.
sure. Yeah.
It's better for people to be educated when they're making the decision and actually make the best decision. And
Uh,
so, yeah, there should be, I think, more folks who sort of, I wouldn't say embrace their competitors as co-creators, but at least you're open to having, a co-creation conversation. I mean, at conferences, often conference producers will put competitors on the same panel, right?
oh
And so
yeah,
that's
yeah. That's how I've
content
done
is
the
being
co-creating with competitors. I just always thought they were very interesting conversations, you know? Like
absolutely.
if I was the consumer, I would find that helpful. And there's a interesting psychological trick to it as well. Like when I did the big filter, I say change your life, maybe for the negative, and you laugh. Like part of the thing is like one, making you laugh is good, but two, just being so transparently honest. Like if you buy my thing, something terrible might happen. You know, like this is what it is. And just saying like me being open to referring other people to my competitors is very similar. Like there's a psychological trick. Like I trust that person because he's really not trying to sell me. So I'm
Yeah.
sold now.
I call it the Miracle on 34th effect, from the
Yeah,
movie,
yeah.
right? Where the Santa tells the person to go down the street because they're out of stock on the truck or whatever it is. And it builds trust.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's one of the most fascinating. Like I view marketing as art, so I get really excited by this type of stuff. So the whole psychology of it is just amazing to read about.
So, a final question is, events are back, right? I mean, I happen to be an investor into companies that do events, the C-Suite
Oh,
Network
good.
and Possible, which ran the event in the Fountain Pool in Miami Beach, where Elon and Linda had their first conversation, publicly. Uh, Everyone thought that he was actually going to give her the job there at the show. That it ended up being later. But events are back, and are you guys participating in events? And sort of, if so, how do you go through your decision-making process of, okay, we should exhibit here, or we should try to get a speaking engagement there, or are they back on your radar as a one of the marketing legs for you?
Yeah, so we've had a strong history with conferences. This year, I'm not sponsoring really any of them. But with that said, I like conferences. If the rest of your infrastructure is up and ready, then I think conferences serve a couple factors like brand awareness, obviously, trust building. I think a lot of people go to conferences with the wrong mindset. I guess it depends on what you're selling, but for me, like I'm not going there to make sales contacts with prospects. I'm going there to make partnerships. So every sponsor is a potential partner for me. Hey, you're trying to target to the same people as me. How about we work together? The speakers, every single one of them, I try to get on, talk to them. And if I am sponsoring the event, I almost always have a speaking slot because again, the education bit. Like I was at Affiliate World. I've spoken at every one of their events now. And the first time, like people came up to us like buy and sell sites, like, oh, you guys sell traffic. Like, no, 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 no. No, that's not what we sell. We sell businesses, not traffic. We're not a traffic network. So like having that education piece, I think is very, very important. But I treat conferences as middle of the funnel. So if someone is there, they're already problem aware enough for me to start presenting the solution in my mind of what they're thinking about. So that's what I use conferences for. But yeah, this year, if I get speaking slots, I have a event coming up in April that I'm speaking at. If I get speaker roles, I usually go. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. But if I get the rest of my infrastructure up and running, I'm hoping to do a few more speeches towards the end of the year.
Cool, cool. Well, Gregory, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom on this. It was great to walk through your business and learn the marketing tricks that you like to use and strategies you like to use.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.